All right, so what's up with the presentation in week 7? Here we are in the course where you see your reading selection. You see more information about Bill Moyer's interview, a presentation by Dr. Cohn on the cross and the lynching tree, how he relates those two important symbols of American religious culture. And then you see your online presentation video rubric. So let's go over to the rubric. You're earning your points this week through a presentation. This presentation is meant to increase your skills in presenting your understanding of material, something that pretty much every job will ask of you, to explain yourself or explain your understanding. And part of our challenge as an online classroom is that we'll be meeting in conferences, that function of the online classroom, in the hopes that we will see the most of us possible. We will at least hear the voices of the most of us possible. And we might get to see an uploaded visual aid to help the rest of us. There will be challenges in the online classroom, just like there are in face-to-face classrooms. How many times have you seen a technology fail? But as we look here at the rubric, I think the most important thing for you to understand is I'm expecting 5 to 10 minutes for your presentation. And it's hard to discuss 2 chapters of a book in 5 to 10 minutes well. So you're being asked to summarize and synthesize what is significant about each of these chapters. Those are great skills to develop. So you're not going to try to read through 2 chapters. You can't do that in 5 to 10 minutes out loud. You are going to, having read 2 chapters well, having taken your notes, having created an outline probably whereby you're going to work off of what the rubric says I want to hear, and summarize the chapters, and then synthesize in order to be able to answer the questions. So the rubric starts with, the first 2 are really about public speaking and communication skills. So your virtual presence, that you succeeded in joining the conference. There will be people who cannot join it, and we will do phone conversations or whatever else. But we are trying, I've set up the rubric in the idea that everybody's going to try to be there. That you've made a good faith effort to engage with colleagues in there. Not everybody's going to have colleagues. So I will know how to fairly, if you're the only person who shows up for a conference, you're not going to get a 0 for that. I will know how to fairly adjust. But we're setting this up for an ideal situation. That you listened or asked questions. For your language skills, correct usage, appropriate vocabulary and grammar, that would mean that you were drawing heavily from Cohn's work as in terms of your choice of grammar. Had a student today with a call about the difference between the use of Yahweh and God in Cohn's work. And he noticed that Old Testament seems to be referring to Yahweh, New Testament is referring to Jesus Christ, and then God is, because he's paying attention to these words, God is an overarching term, but if he uses Yahweh, it's because he's referring to the Old Testament. I'm just giving you that as an example of paying attention to the vocabulary that will send signals in my head that says you have read Cohn and you're bringing Cohn to the session. Your organization, that you have done this synthesis work, summary and synthesis work, and you think to yourself, I got 5 minutes, I'm going to give 2 minutes to the first chapter, 2 minutes to the second chapter, 1 minute to my summary of how this provides an orientation. So that kind of organization that says you thought it through, you went from I'll report on these into I will design an interesting presentation. that your presentation has a logical structure, that you haven't started at the end of chapter 2. But you're going to walk us through the information, that you're signposting so that you're able to, these are those lovely little phrases. They happen at the end of paragraphs. They happen in public presentations. Having completed a discussion of chapter 1, as we move into chapter 2, the issue here is now going to be These signposts allow your listener to know, oh, that's good. Now what we've done is wrapped up that, and we're moving into number 2. And this person is not even just saying we're moving into chapter 2, but they've already given me their first summary of what's significant about chapter 2. They must have been thinking. All right, so then we get into the stuff of the presentation in mastery of the subject. So you will be able to accurately identify theology as a type of discourse with rules. So this is an academic understanding of what theology is. It is a discourse. It has set up for itself rules. Anybody who goes to seminary learns the rules of theology. So you need to be able to identify theology as a discourse with its rules. That you can accurately describe Cone's black theology. So he lays out his rules for you. And so you're going to be able to say what are his sources, what are his norms. Those are the rules that theology plays by. You will, this third point discusses the orientation that Cone develops with blackness as the center of Christian meaning. That's a synthesis question. That's asking you not only to have read Cone well, but that you are thinking about our methodology in the course, and you can bring in Charles Long's argument that if we approach religion as an orientation to the ultimate significance of one's place in the world, you can read Cone through that lens and be able to identify the ways that Cone reorients theological discourse by recentering theology's task in the work of speaking for the oppressed. So Cone is reorienting what is Christian theology in America, and in so doing, he raises blackness itself as a theological issue. As you can imagine, there are plenty of white churches out there that never thought to themselves, let's explore blackness as a theological issue. Right? Because they are centered in the kind of dominant and superior position they've always gotten to enjoy, where theology meant us. And it didn't mean that us had a color. It meant us, and it thought it meant all people. And what black theology understood early on through the Jim Crow segregation laws that allotted people their proper church place, black theology understood all the way along that us meant a hierarchical positioning. And Cone is managing not only to say that blackness matters as a theological issue, but then God is where blackness is, which is the place of social justice, the struggle for social justice. That is where you will find God. That's a reorientation. It describes the location of ultimate significance. It has now located the divine in the work of the impoverished. Those are the kinds of issues that, in terms of mastery of the subject, if you are able to, having described what happens in the 2 chapters, give us your particular take on how is an orientation being figured on the landscape of American religious culture in this text of the 1960s. And finally, that you'd be able to answer questions because you are familiar enough with the cone that if I or one of your classmates asks you a question, it doesn't mean that you won't want to take a moment. You see how I do this. Try to figure and calculate that answer, but that you will be able to provide an answer that represents not the right answer, but represents what you can confidently say. Visual aids, always helpful. This is my visual aid of this little video. It helps you, the listener, to follow along as you will. As a visual aid, you could bring in a PowerPoint presentation. You could bring in a simple Word document. You could bring in some images. Simple is better. And because all of us are learning this function, how well we're going to upload and get those things uploaded there. Canvas offers little helper videos. If you click on the help button and you go to Canvas and you go to Canvas Guides and you do a search for conferences, you will find helpful videos that would walk you through the process of how to upload your visual aid. If you don't have a visual aid, are you going to lose all the points? Not if it's because you have not figured out how to upload it. You can send it to me in an email. That means it's helpful and good for your grade. I hope this gives you really clear instruction from which to tackle what I expect is a heart rate accelerating reading experience, and thus one of the more exciting moments of a university career. Certainly always interesting and exciting to me. Thanks.